Lamb boy. And I guess I've been dreaming. Cause now that I'm woke, everything that I see ain't what it seems, man. I guess I've been dreaming. Cause now that I'm here, what I feel motivates me with reason. I guess I've been dreaming. Cause now that I'm woke, everything that I see ain't what it seems, man. I guess I've been dreaming. Cause now that I'm here, what I feel motivates me with reason. I guess I've been dreaming.
What it is, what it do, people? How we doing out there? How the world treating y'all? We good? Salute, man. What's happening? What's happening? So, yo, I already know that we should be familiar with some a term called splicing and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Human experiments and stuff like that. You know what I mean? We should be a little familiar with some of this stuff going on. Maybe if you believe it, maybe not. But anyways, that brings us to today. And, of course, I do hope everybody's doing good out there. You know what I'm saying? But that does bring us to today because staff has dropped 20 evil scientists who have experimented on humans. 20 evil scientists experimenting on people. It's like we're talking Dr. Monroe splicing type deal. You feel me? Which that storyline is deeper than you think. But yeah, that's what staff dropped on us for today's segment. So you know what I'm saying? Today we're gonna get this one busting. And then, you know what I'm saying, this evening we know we gonna get it back into that 7 spiritual level. You know what I'm talking about? I love that part of it. I love that part. Spirituality, man. You know what I mean? Real deal. It's the real deal. But anyways, I hope everybody has what they need. I hope your day so far is running smoothly. Mine is, of course, excelente. But without further ado, let's get it busting.
Hey, welcome to a new video. Scientists, the pioneers of knowledge and discovery, play a crucial role in the progress of humanity. They bring forth innovative solutions, search for cures, and strive for a better world. But like in any community, there's also a few who have used their scientific knowledge for sinister purposes. Today we'll show you 20 malevolent scientists who experimented on humans. Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video. Number 20.
Before we got started,
imagine discovering that you don't just have one, but 2 twin brothers. 3 identical triplets named Bobby, Eddie, and David were born in 1961 and separated at birth, each being adopted by different families. The triplets were part of a secret and highly controversial experiment conducted by a group of scientists. The experiment was known as the Nature versus Nurture study, aimed to investigate the role of genetics and environment in human development. The triplets were intentionally separated at birth and placed in families with different backgrounds to observe how their lives and personalities would differ as a result of their upbringing. The triplets were not informed of the existence of their brothers until they accidentally discovered each other at the age of 19. Their reunion garnered national media attention, and the triplets became overnight sensations. However, a documentary later revealed a dark side to the experiment. The study was conducted without the knowledge or consent of the adopted families, who were told that their children were participating in a routine study of child development. Number 19. The experiment of Michael Cypher in the French Alps was a groundbreaking study in the field of human physiology and psychology. Taking place in 1962, the study was conducted by French scientist Michael Cypher, who spent 2 months alone in a cave in the French Alps to study the effects of isolation and darkness. During the experiment, he lived completely isolated from the outside world, without access to natural light or sound. He slept and woke up according to his own internal clock, without external clues to guide his behavior. One of the most notable findings of the study was the discovery of the free-running sleep cycle, in which his sleep-wake cycle gradually extended from 24 hours to 36 hours. This suggested that humans have an inherent internal clock that can function independently of external signals such as light and sound. The study also revealed the profound psychological effects of isolation and darkness on human perception and rhythms. For instance, he reported hallucinations, disorientation, and changes in his sense of time and space during his cave stay. His mental state was also affected, and he reported feeling increasingly anxious and depressed as the experiment progressed. Number 18. Operation Sea Spray was a secret military operation conducted by the U.S. government in San Francisco in 1950. Dr. Edward Neven, a naval microbiologist, was tasked with developing a biological weapon for the U.S. Army. The operation involved releasing large quantities of the bacterium Serratia marcescens into the city's atmosphere to test potential spread of biological weapons. The bacterium was released by the U.S. Navy using motorized boats in the areas of San Francisco Bay and carried by the wind to the surrounding neighborhoods. The operation was carried out without the knowledge or consent of the residents or officials of the city and remained classified until it was declassified in the 1970s.
Of course not.
The operation was designed to assess the potential use of biological weapons in warfare and test the effectiveness of various defense measures. However, the release of the bacterium had unintended consequences, and several people subsequently became infected, leading to illnesses and at least one death. The operation has been criticized for its lack of transparency and ethical violations, as well as the potential risks to public health. Number 17. The Milgram experiment was a socio-psychological study conducted by Stanley Milgram in the early 1960s. The study aimed to investigate the extent to which people would obey authority figures, even when it conflicted with their own moral beliefs. The experiment involved pairs of participants, with one person acting as the teacher and the others as the learner. The teacher was instructed to administer electric shocks to the learner every time they answered a question incorrectly. In reality, the learner was a confederate of the researcher and didn't actually get shocked. However, the teacher was unaware of this, and they believed they were inflicting genuine pain on the learner. The study found that a significant percentage of participants were willing to continue, even when the shocks reached dangerous and potentially lethal levels. This suggested that people are often willing to obey authority figures, even when it goes against their own moral convictions. Number 16. Operation Big Buzz was a secret military experiment conducted by the U.S. government in the 1950s. The experiment involved the release of 300,000 mosquitoes infected with yellow fever and other diseases in various locations across the country, including Savannah, Georgia.
They doing that right now, y'all.
The operation was carried out without the knowledge or consent of the local residents, and it remained a secret for many years. The mosquitoes were released to study the spread of the disease and test the effectiveness of different insecticides. The doctors and scientists involved with Operation Big Buzz primarily came from the U.S. Army Chemical Corps and the CDC. The operation was led by Dr. William C. Gorgas, Jr., who had the task of developing new methods to control the spread of mosquito-borne diseases. In the aftermath of the operation, scientists defended the experiment as a necessary step in the development of new methods and to prevent the spread of diseases. They argued that the operation was conducted with the best intentions and that the potential risks to public health were minimal.
Check it out, y'all.
Number 15.
A bug in a package. Didn't we just have a mosquito outbreak all of a sudden? 2023, y'all, this year. Look it up. Come on now. What y'all think going on with that? Yeah, yeah, that's something. Oh, see now, yeah, I know about this one. Everybody knows about this one. But let's get it, y'all.
The Tuskegee experiment was a notorious clinical study conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service from 1932 to 1972. The study involved over 600 African-American men from rural Alabama who were infected with syphilis and then left untreated to observe the natural progression of the disease. However, the study was conducted without the informed consent from the participants, who were not informed that they had syphilis and were not given any treatments. There was even penicillin available as a remedy for the disease, but it was not given to them. The unethical nature of the study sparked a significant criticism and condemnation among the public. Since then, the U.S. government has enacted a series of laws and regulations designed to protect the rights of human subjects in medical research. In recent years, efforts have also been made to address the legacy of the Tuskegee experiment, including apologies and compensation for the survivors and their families. Number 14. Psychic manipulation, also known as brainwashing, was a controversial and unethical psychological experiment conducted by Canadian psychiatrist Ewan Cameron during the 1950s and 1960s. The experiment consisted of 2 phases. During the first phase, Ewin used a combination of sensory deprivation and high-dose electroconvulsive therapy to erase the patient's memories and diminish their existing personality structures. The patients were subjected to prolonged sensory deprivation, receiving repetitive audio messages intended to break their existing thinking and behavioral patterns. Additionally, the patients received high doses of ECT, further disrupting their memories and thought processes. In the second phase, the patients were exposed to a series of new stimuli, including positive affirmations and messages intended to promote obedience to authority figures. The patients were also subjected to sensory overload, such as flashing lights and loud noises, to condition them to respond to certain stimuli. All of this was done without the informed consent of the patients. The scientists had them listen to repetitive messages for periods of up to 16 hours. Many of the patients who underwent the treatment reported lasting psychological trauma,
torture.
including memory loss, nightmares, and anxiety.
Dude, that's pure torture. That's pure
Number
torture.
13. The
Bruh, that's pure torture. And it's kind of crazy that for the data that y'all are actually willing to do that to people. You're not human. You're not human. You can't be. If you're pulling that stuff off and you have no emotions, you have no feelings toward that. Y'all don't have any feelings toward that. What y'all doing to people? That's torture. Y'all torturing them. That's MK Ultra. Like damn near everything he said was MK Ultra. Let's get it, y'all.
Monster study was an unethical psychological experiment conducted by researcher Wendell Johnson in 1939. The experiment involved a group of 22 orphan children who were selected for the study because they stuttered or had some other speech disorder. The children were divided into 2 groups. One group received positive speech therapy, while the other group was subjected to negative speech therapy. In the negative therapy group, the children were told they had a severe stutter, even if they didn't, and they were criticized for their speech disorder. The aim of the research was to examine the effect of negative feedback on speech patterns, but the experiment was criticized for its use of unethical methods. The study was also criticized for using vulnerable and powerless orphan children as subjects. Following the study, Wendell faced damage to his reputation and received criticism from many in the scientific community for his unethical treatment. He eventually apologized for his role in the study, and efforts were made to improve ethical standards in psychological research, particularly regarding the use of vulnerable populations as research subjects. Number 12. Stubbins Firth was a medical student in Philadelphia in the early 19th century who conducted a controversial self-experiment to try to prove the yellow fever wasn't contagious. He attempted to contract the disease by himself by seeking out patients with yellow fever, but he never became ill. While his experiment failed to prove his hypotheses, it did highlight the importance of experimental control and ethical considerations in medical research. Another experiment related to the yellow fever was conducted by Walter Reed. It took place in the early 20th century and involved a series of medical experiments to study the transmission of yellow fever. The experiments were led by Walter Reed, a physician in the U.S. Army, and involved the use of human subjects who were exposed to the yellow fever virus. The experiments were conducted with informed consent from the participants, who were mainly volunteers from the military, and demonstrated that yellow fever was transmitted by mosquitoes. The experiments led to the development of effective mosquito control measures, which have contributed to reducing the spread of yellow fever and other mosquito-borne diseases. Despite their contribution to medical knowledge, the yellow fever experiments have been criticized for their ethical violation.
Bruh, that's idiotic. Like, y'all sound like pure idiots, man. How in the fuck? How are you a scientist, dude? You sound like an idiot. Like, y'all literally think y'all control everything. And that's why most of that stuff fail. Even your little agenda, it fails too. That's stupid. And y'all keep using these mosquitoes. Y'all always got a reason why you doing something, but I can pretty much guarantee you that reason is a a lie. I guarantee you. I'm trying to keep them use profanity. I'm sorry. So it be, you know what I'm saying? They get that. Hey, Cause you playing with people's lives, man. I don't like it. It's a game. You game with folks' lives. You just playing with people's lives with no regard for human life, man. You can't be human, man. You ain't got no regard for human life. You can't be. Let's talk about it.
Number 11. An experiment designed to study language acquisition and the development of social behavior in primates resulted in the following. Gua was a female chimpanzee raised alongside a human baby as a part of a scientific experiment conducted by Luella and Winthrop Kellogg in the 1930s. Gua grew up with the baby in their home in California. The family raised the two as if they were siblings and documented their interactions to study the development of language and social behaviors in both species. The experiment was groundbreaking at the time and contributed to the understanding of similarities and differences between human and primate behavior. However, ethical questions were...
I'm just gonna say this: when y'all find out the truth, it ain't us though. It's somebody here, but it ain't us. Somebody got primate in them. I could tell you who it is. You want to know who it is? I'll let you find out. Let's say hypertrichosis. Go look that up. We'll find out who it is.
Were raised about the use of a wild animal as a research subject. Ultimately, the experiment was considered partially successful, as Gua was able to learn some basic human behaviors and language skills. However, the experiment was discontinued when they found Gua becoming too difficult to handle and integrate into their family. The chimpanzee was eventually returned to a group of other chimpanzees, where she spent the rest of her life. Number 10. Unit 731 was a secret research unit for biological and chemical warfare of the Japanese Imperial Army that operated in China during World War II. The unit conducted a series of human experiments on thousands of Chinese civilians and prisoners of war. It's estimated that 250,000 people were involved in the experiments of Unit 731. The victims were subjected to extreme procedures, including infection with diseases such as anthrax, plague, and cholera. These experiments were carried out by a team of Japanese military doctors and scientists led by Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii. Shiro was a microbiologist who had been tasked by the Japanese government to develop biological weapons for use against their enemies. Many of the doctors in these experiments have been identified, and their actions have been widely condemned. However, some of those involved claim that they were simply following orders and that their actions were necessary. After the war, many of the doctors were granted immunity by the American government in exchange for their research data. Number 9. It's often suggested that the government authorized the conduct of biological experiments during the Cold War. During that time, a scientist named Albert Western decided to create a super soldier. As no one volunteered as a test subject, he ultimately chose his own daughter, Abigail, as the test subject. The more he experimented on her, the more Abigail's appearance drastically changed, and her behavior became more animalistic as a result of the experiment.
Dude, you're a real fuckboy. You need a test subject? Can find one? Do what Bruce Banner did. Test yourself. You did your own family? Your child? You did your child?
Colleagues urged Albert to stop the experiment. Abigail's only contact with the outside world was the food delivered to her steel door and her father, who was often seen crying outside her room. Eventually, Albert disappeared from the scene, and Abigail became increasingly wild, until one day she managed to escape, killing 2 guards in the process. A few days later, she was found and locked behind the steel door, which was sealed with concrete. While some people believe this story to be true, others say it's just a fictional tale. What do you think?
I think it's true because we have this thing called cryptids and SCPs. I'm sure a lot of people with children should be familiar with the SCP. And if you are and you thought that they were just what for YouTube and little kids things, no, they're actual real entities. They were created by some mad splicing. That's where most of this stuff come from. Splicing. Human splicing, mixing it with other species from and not from this planet. That's where you're getting this stuff from. So I definitely believe that's ASAP 100. All the way. But bro, you did your child like that? You did your child like that? And now they got this thing locked up somewhere, probably still alive, behind a concrete wall. So
let me know in the comments. Number 8. The human radiation experiments were a series of experiments conducted on human subjects during the Cold War to study the effects of radiation on the human body. Human subjects were exposed to various levels of radiation through direct exposure to radioactive materials. The subjects were often unaware of the risk and didn't give informed consent. Many of the experiments were conducted on vulnerable populations, such as prisoners, pregnant women, and children. As a result of radiation exposure, many subjects experienced severe health consequences. Some of the discoveries included understanding the long-term effects of radiation exposure on the body and the development of techniques to measure radiation exposure. However, these scientific advancements came at a great cost to the human subjects involved in these experiments. Dr. Eugene Sanger and Dr. Carl Heller were two of the physicians who conducted experiments on prisoners at the Oregon State Penitentiary, and both eventually had their medical licenses revoked. Number 7.
Bastards.
MK-Ultra was a top-secret government program conducted by the CIA during the Cold War, with the aim of researching mind control techniques.
They still do this to this day.
The program was initiated in the early 1950s and officially approved by the CIA in 1953. The most famous scientist involved in the program was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, who led the program. The program involved a range of experiments, including the use of LSD and other psychoactive substances and hypnosis. These experiments were conducted on both voluntary and involuntary human subjects, including prisoners, psychiatric patients, and other vulnerable populations.
Celebrities,
the program was eventually
sports
revealed to the
figures,
public
all
in the
that.
1970s, leading to widespread condemnation and calls for accountability. In 1973, the CIA director ordered that all MKUltra files be destroyed. But some documents survived and were later declassified and made public.
Because they didn't.
Number 6. Burke and Hare were a notorious duo of serial killers.
Hey, y'all notice he said they did not stop the program. Notice that. Everybody else and everything else been getting shut down or license provoked and evoked, well, not evoked, but license provoked and damn tossed out. You know what I'm saying? And but this MK Ultra thing, he just move on. Let's just move on to number. You know what I mean? We never stopped the program. So like I just said, they're still doing MK Ultra on people till this day. To this very day, MK Ultra is on a lot of people around you. Believe me. And I'm not talking just celebrity. I'm talking, you know what I'm saying, your everydays. Your everydays. They working magic, man. Y'all better watch out out there. I'm trying to tell you.
Active in Edinburgh, Scotland, in the early 19th century. They began their criminal career by supplying bodies for experimentation to scientists. At that time, the only legal source of bodies for medical schools was from deceased criminals. Burke and Hare quickly realized they could make more money by supplying fresh bodies to these medical schools. Robert Knox was a scientist who purchased many of the bodies supplied by Burke and Hare. While he was not directly involved in taking these human lives, his reputation was tarnished by his association with Burke and Hare. He was criticized for his willingness to purchase bodies without asking too many questions about their origin. The victims of Burke and Hare were often poor and vulnerable individuals, such as beggars and prostitutes. The duo is believed to have claimed at least 16 lives. Number 5. The story of the Russian sleep experiment describes a group
Just
of Russian
taking people?
scientists who conducted an experiment in which 5 prisoners were kept awake for 15 days. According to the story, the prisoners experienced severe psychological and physical problems, including paranoia and hallucinations. The experiment was eventually terminated, and the lives of the prisoners were lost. While the story of the Russian sleep experiment is often presented as a true story, there's no evidence to support its existence. However, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. Scientists have studied sleep in general. In the 1960s and 1970s, psychologist Montague Ullman conducted a series of experiments, the dream telepathy experiments, in which participants were asked to write down their dreams and then attempt to transmit them to a receiver, sleeping in a separate room. Although the results of the experiments were inconclusive, they remain an interesting example of attempts to study the paranormal. Do you believe the Russian sleep experiment was real?
Yes.
Let me know in the comments. Number 4. The Aversion Project was a series of medical experiments conducted by the South African military during the apartheid regime. The project aimed to cure behavior deemed deviant through aversion therapy. This involved subjecting individuals to unpleasant situations while exposing them to images or thoughts related to deviant behavior. The experiments were conducted on both male and female subjects, many of whom were coerced or forced to participate. The doctors involved in the project were criticized for their lack of ethical considerations and for carrying out experiments that caused serious harm to the subjects. Many of the subjects involved in the experiments suffered long-term physical and psychological consequences as a result of the treatments they received. After the project was made public in the 1990s, some of the doctors involved were accused of crimes against humanity. However, many doctors were never held accountable for their actions. Number 3.
Of course not.
J. Marion Sims was an American physician from the 19th century,
Y'all
often
dirty.
referred
Boy,
to
that's
as
why-
the
that's-
father of modern gynecology. However, he conducted groundbreaking medical research through a series of unethical experiments on enslaved women. He did so without their consent and without the use of anesthesia. J. Marion Sims believed that black women did not experience pain in the same way as white women. He also performed multiple surgeries on the same woman. His experiment
Now, it's a reason why he thinks this. You should ask, why does he think that? Because we told we were supposed to be the same. That's what they told us, that we were all the same. So why would this one particular doctor seem to think that black women and white women feeling pain is different? Because y'all will soon discover that there are a lot of differences between us. A lot. And it's way beyond genetics. But yeah, we can start with genetics. So it's a reason why this doctor would feel this way. Intriguing. Let's continue.
experiments focused on developing surgical techniques to repair conditions that occur during childbirth. While the physician's work led to significant advancements in gynecology medicine, his methods were criticized even during his own time. Many fellow physicians found his experiments to be cruel and unethical, and he faced significant criticism from the medical community. Some even accused him of conducting experiments purely for his own personal gain. Number 2.
Well, what would give you that
Baby
note?
Faye was a newborn girl in 1984 with a severe heart defect. In an attempt to save her life, her doctors performed a groundbreaking surgery to implant a baboon heart into her chest, which was the very first attempt at xenotransplantation of a heart in a human. The surgery was led by Dr. Leonard Bailey. While the surgery was initially successful and Baby Faye's heart began to beat, she ultimately passed away 21 days later due to complications from the procedure. The operation garnered significant attention and sparked controversy, with many questioning the ethics of using an animal heart in a human. One of the key ethical considerations in xenotransplantation is the potential for the transfer of diseases from animals to humans. There's a risk that the recipient of the animal organ can contract a disease from the animal, which could have serious implications for both the recipient and the broader population. Additionally, there's concerns about the welfare of the animal used in the research. What's your stance on this?
My stance is there is a reason why these doctors are using animal organs on humans. Boy, I can't wait till y'all find out. The look on y'all faces, man. Oh my goodness. When you find out why they doing that.
Number 1. The Stanford Prison Experiment was a controversial psychological study conducted by Dr. Philip Zimbardo in 1971. The experiment aimed to investigate psychological effects of power and authority on individuals, using students as participants. The experiment involved dividing the students into 2 groups, a group of prisoners and a group of guards. The guards were given complete control over the prisoners and were allowed to use psychological and physical tactics to maintain control. The experiment was intended to last for 2 weeks, but was terminated after only 6 days due to the extreme behavior of the guards and the deteriorating mental health of the prisoners. The participants in the experiment were not screened for psychological or emotional stability, and many of them suffered significant mental health issues as a result of their participation. The guards in the experiment were not given specific instructions or guidelines for their behavior, which led to a power vacuum in which some guards behaved in extremely abusive ways. The guards even went so far as to deprive prisoners of food, water, and sleep, keeping them awake for prolonged periods and disrupting their sleep patterns. Which scientists and experiments did you find the most disturbing?
To be honest with you, I actually find them all disturbing because each and every one of them, you did things to people without their consent. You forced people to do things without their consent. You operated and murdered and killed people and sent people up the wall without their consent, with no regards for their feelings, regards for their emotions, their pains, or anything, their families, anything. I have an issue with it all. That is complete heinous. No regard for human life whatsoever, and most of y'all didn't even get in trouble. Some of y'all actually even got out of your wickedness just giving up your information and data. That shows you the corruption of the governments that actually allowed y'all to skate just so they could get your data, so they can continue your experience and continue your work with you overseeing it. And that's why most of y'all didn't lose your license, because you got recruited. So yeah, huge issue. Y'all playing with people. And then some of these folks don't even know that some of their DNA are animal. Because you won't tell them. You won't even tell them the truth. You're just trying to operate on them and put animal organs in their bodies, but you won't tell them that they actually come from animal. You got everybody thinking that they're humans. No, dog. That's not it. They lied. Okay, people, they lied. You do your due diligence, you'll find out the truth. You'll find out exactly what they lied about and who they lied to, which is everybody, and what they lied about. Then when you find out why, the why though, that's crazy. That is crazy. 20 scientists with assistants, and those experiments got crazy. Some people got their license stripped. Others just criticized. But all y'all know the truth. Y'all know the difference between so-called black people and so-called white folks. Y'all know the difference, but y'all won't tell nobody. Y'all making us think that we're the same. We're not the same, y'all. I'm here to tell you. We ain't the same. And it's beyond genetics, but we can start there. We're not the same. Nothing. We're nothing alike. Nothing. 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 Don't let them tell y'all that. Blessed is he who reads.